Welcome, everyone, to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, and with me to cover this wide-spanning, interesting topic is my good friend, Hannah. Welcome to the show, Hannah.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And people who are really into Dune might recognize both of us from covering the Dune Prophecy series on the Sisterhood podcast, which was available on Dune Newsnet. It was a fun adventure. It was actually a year ago when we were recording.
That's crazy.
This. Yeah. A lot has passed since then.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start out by saying we're going to be digging deep into the Force and specifically how it is treated in canon, because we think it's saying something. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, of what we think it's trying to say. Yeah. And I think it also throws down how consistent the use of the Force is in all media across the board. And thus, the story group has a heavy hand in how the Force is used, how it can be represented, how it can be spoken about. So this question came to our minds with the recent news from Adam Driver about the hunt for Ben Solo. So can I ask you, Hannah, where were you when you found out the news?
It was okay. So I actually can't remember what happened that day. I guess I was just really busy with school and a lot. So I was like not online at all the actual day that everything came out. So it was the next day when your podcast episode came out where you guys were reacting to it and talking about it, and that's how I found out.
Oh my goodness. I
was just sitting there in the morning getting ready to go to school, listening to the podcast like as I was like getting dressed and doing my hair and stuff, and I was like completely dumbfounded and like immediately like searching out the article and like needing to read exactly everything that Adam Driver said. And yeah, it was crazy.
It felt a little weird, like surreal in a way that it was happening, that this was something that had been happening this whole time. And, you know, I think it's important for us to put this in the timeline order, right? So it's been since 2021, 2022 that this idea has been really, really percolating. And so it has influenced so much of the last 3-4 years of storytelling within Star Wars. And Hannah, you and I were texting and we were like, it's weird because Star Wars has been incredibly consistent with how they talk about certain concepts and thoughts and the groundwork that they have been laying with the World Between Worlds coming back in Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And it sort of made us both go like, do we need to talk about the Force? And then more recently, even today, I feel like I've sent you like 3 versions of this Reddit thread over the course of the last month. There was this Reddit thread where people are like, I don't really like how the Force is used in Star Wars. I don't really agree with it. I don't really understand it. And so we wanted to also kind of talk about that a little bit, in that many people who watch Star Wars maybe don't read Star Wars, because I feel like reading Star Wars, you get a very consistent message about what the Force is. If you're just like watching the original trilogy, maybe the prequels, didn't really pay attention during The Last Jedi, you're not getting a very, I would say, full view of what the Force is. Haha, I said the thing.
What the Force?
What the Force. But George, the story group, even the original trilogy, all point to the same thing. And I think that that's really, really important. And so, like, how are they using it? What other concepts have they introduced to show that and tie into what a story about Ben could entail, as well as let's make some educated wishes, to quote Deadpool.
Yes.
His let's make a franchise forebearer on what this all might mean.
Yeah.
Let's dig into the Force.
Yeah.
So let's start with how people often interpret it.
Okay, yeah, that's a good place to start.
So this thread specifically said,
Yeah.
the Force is, you kind of need to only be light side, or the dark side is Cancer.
Yes. And it's like saying, and then they were saying that like, to say that you need to be in balance is that you need one half of your body to be like corrupted by Cancer, by Cancer. And so like, but that's not.
This interpretation that like Anakin bringing balance to the Force was destroying all the Jedi and basically leaving two Jedi and 2 Sith out there.
Yeah, and then I think they even mentioned the original post also was like, it's very clear that the prophecy was saying that he had to destroy the Sith and that was going to bring balance. And I'm like, there's even the prequels say that the Jedi were very likely and basically were for sure. They were misinterpreting the prophecy. They were just assuming it meant what they wanted it to mean. And that's why like they even start to question whether or not Anakin is even the chosen one, even whether the chosen one is even a real thing, let alone or their interpretation of how balanced.
Projected all of their desires on Anakin because he was incredibly powerful and this special guy, this special little guy. Okay, so the dark side is not Cancer. That's really important because in general, George Lucas, influenced by Campbell, would understand the concept of the Mask of God. And the Mask of God specifically talks about how if you have this overview of everything in the universe, like the Force does, there is no difference between good and bad. And you think about the Father in Mortis, symbolically. He doesn't view his children as good or bad. He just views them as his children, right? And darkness is inherently part of the universe. Talking about The Last Jedi, life, death, dark, good, light,
cold,
dark,
warm.
Cold, warm. Like these opposites, these binaries that mortals view things as, is not how the Force views things as. They are a flow, waves of the same ocean, up and down. Okay, so what does balance look like? Surfing.
Ooh, see, that's another thing that's like really occurs lots also within canon is examples where they specifically describe things in that way of like waves and navigating waves.
Yeah.
And we'll get a little bit more into that. But I also want to point out that like Bendu from Rebels, and I think this is also really key, is like talking about Dave Filoni, especially when we start talking about canon overall, because even before Dave Filoni has the position at Lucasfilm that he has now, I think Dave Filoni's always been incredibly influential in like what Star Wars is, like being like the essentially apprentice, the Padawan to George Lucas. He, I think, is probably you could easily say the person there who knows Star Wars the best
and listened to George talk about the Force and is able to understand it probably, secondhand as best as he can from George, right?
And in Rebels, which is one of Dave Filoni's shows that he created, there's the scene with Bendu talking to Kanan, and Kanan shows him the Sith holocron. And Kanan's like, "Oh, be careful with that. It's so dangerous." But then the Bendu just like opens it and is like, "What? This thing's
good,
not
bad.
Is it dangerous?"
I'm the one in the middle, right?
Yeah, I'm the one in the middle.
And that is to say, Bendu, at least on his planet, is a god, right? He has the Mask of God. The idea of the Mask of God is when you connect with the universe, you connect with the idea of the Force in Star Wars. This would be similar, right? So you experience an apotheosis like event and you understand what it is to have a view of God. Us as humans really have a hard time conceptualizing this. So it's very hard. The best I can come to is when you hear NASA astronauts talk about the overview effect, where they sort of see eternity in the stars behind them, and then they see this tiny little planet that all life that has ever existed for Earth has existed on, and they feel their insignificance of living within this large galaxy. What does good and bad mean in the extent of endlessness? That is sort of the idea of the Mask of God. Time doesn't exist. Good and bad doesn't exist. Cold and warmth doesn't exist if you kind of think of things from God's lens, right?
Yeah.
Bendu is a god, and he doesn't view things as good or bad. He just views them as they are, which is just things. The only thing that really upsets him is the invaders to his planet.
Yes. And this is like another thing that I think keeps coming up about like this scene with Bendu that there are other examples of as well. But the spiders on the planet, the rebels see them as hostile from the beginning, and something. So they use these rod things that repel them. And Kanan says that he needs it to protect himself, but then Bendu like breaks the rod, and he's like, "That's not the only way to protect yourself." And that's when Kanan kind of realizes that these spiders aren't actually trying to hurt him. And they're only responding to the initial hostility.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like very mirrored, right? Like you are hostile to them, and so they're hostile to you. I do like viewing the Force and dark side users and light side users, villains and heroes in this like large way, very much like the negative archetypes and the positive archetypes within the life archetype model, which Joseph Campbell talks about in A Hero with 1,000 Faces. You can go and look it up. They're all there. Of course, Clarissa Pinkola Estes talks about them. Maureen Murdoch talks about them in different ways within her work. And then we love K.M. Whalen's interpretation of the life archetypes. And when you're in a positive change arc or in balance, you're in balance with the world around you, and you're able to grow and change and take on the struggles that you're in. You're in one of those sort of growth archetypes or those change archetypes, positive change archetypes. If you're in a negative archetype, either passive or aggressive, oftentimes Dark Force users fall into negative archetypes that are aggressive. So Ventress was a vixen. Kylo was a bully. Vader, of course, was a bully. Palpatine was both a evil king, sorcerer. He goes through a bunch of them over the course of his time, but he just sort of like ages from dark aggressive archetype to dark aggressive archetype. The idea is when you're in those dark side places, you're actually just emotionally stuck, right? You're doing evil things because you're protecting yourself. A lot of it is based on fear, which ties back to, of course, the dark side of the Force and how Yoda even talks about it. But why that's important is because in the life archetypes and in story, there is nothing that like prevents you from going back up to a positive change archetype. Actually, it's expected. Like you're oftentimes stuck in a negative archetype, and then you change to a positive archetype once you've resolved whatever was keeping you stuck. Whereas how many people describe the Force is like, once you're in the dark side, you're forever
you're like
will it dominate.
irredeemable.
Yeah, exactly. And that's entirely from Yoda. Forever will it dominate your path, consume you it will, right? And so a lot of people have viewed it that way instead of something that was very dogmatically applied by the Jedi out of fear.
And I think something that we'll get into quite a bit is why were the Jedi so fearful and what would have caused them to become so dogmatic in response.
Yeah. Which we have more answers for because of extended canon, because of the books now.
And I think that like it, obviously like a big criticism for the sequel trilogy was the lack of overarching vision and like a sort of very clear roadmap for those movies, because they were like, oh, well, we want the directors to have full creative control or whatever. But that ends up being a massive criticism. But aside from those movies, everything else that Lucasfilm has put out within canon has been incredibly consistent and has been building off of itself and seemingly building towards something.
Yeah, and I would say that even within the sequel trilogy itself, the Force is still very consistently applied.
I think the Last Jedi is, for a lot of reasons, like the strongest film in the trilogy, but particularly when it comes to the Force, it is so in tune with what everything else in canon is saying about the Force. It's like hand in hand with everything.
And, you know, when we go back and like watch the materials, we see the story group talking about The Last Jedi afterwards, and they were heavily involved in like showing things. You know, Ryan pulled the Force projection from like an old like Jedi Power book, the book on the Jedi. He like, there was this famous thing where people are like, that doesn't exist, and he goes to the bookshelf and he pulls it off the shelf like as a picture, and he opens the page and he shows people like the thing that has existed since the EU. And it's really
I think
cool.
it's really cool. And I think what's really important about that too is the fact that, going back to the Hunt for Ben Solo, we know that because the playlist article that kind of followed up and gave more context to everything that was going on, it very specifically mentions that Dave Filoni and the story group had been involved, given approval, and were completely on board with the
How
movie
Ben would
and
be back, found, all of those things. Yeah.
And so sort of like what will come around to after all of this, I think, is the idea that the Hunt for Ben Solo would and is a really kind of crucial part in what Lucasfilm wants for the future of Star Wars, and what they've been slowly in throughout kind of everything they've been doing outside of just the movies, what they've been wanting to build towards and talk about.
And I do think that it's important to talk about this stuff, because it is sort of the meat of of Star Wars. And
yeah,
as amazing as Andor was, and consistent with some of the archetypical understandings of good and evil, in this idea, right? Because George was taking like a whole bunch of influences when he came up with the Force. We don't really need to go into that. I've done other episodes on this. All right, let's dig into one of the main problems that exists beyond Palpatine. I think that's a really important thing to start with, because even in the prequels, they seem to show that there's something else beyond Palpatine happening in the Force. And then they've consistently called it out in key areas of writing, as well as sort of across canon. And it is called the Rot.
Yes. So this is kind of like it for me. Like when I was like researching all of this, it was like we had like one idea that we wanted to talk about, and then like going back to research for that, everything just sort of snowballed.
Yeah.
And man, so I guess
where does it start?
Yeah.
I think it starts in the prequels.
Yeah. Well, like, because if you look at the Clone Wars show, they spend a lot more time to expand on stuff that they talk about in the prequels that has to do with Anakin and what his role is and what it means to be a chosen one. Sorry, I'm going to pause to ask, like, do you want to talk about the Mortis arc? Was there something else specifically in the prequels that you were thinking of?
Specifically, I wanted to say that, you know, like they do spend a lot of time talking about it in the Clone Wars, and we'll dig into it in a second. But when Yoda says the dark side clouds everything, it's actually that they can't even connect with what is happening. They can't see the Force. And although Palpatine could be making it worse, he was not powerful enough to have been doing that.
Yeah. That's a really good catch. I didn't even connect that, but now that you mentioned that, it's like it's right there.
Mm-hmm.
And like building off of that, I think how small Palpatine is also reiterated in the Mortis arc in Clone Wars, because the way that like Obi-Wan, when him and Ahsoka are confronted by the Son, he's like he asks like, "Are you Sith?" And then the Son laughs and is like, "Yes and no."
Yeah.
And he like sometimes he has Palpatine's voice, sometimes he has Maul's voice, and I think Sam has talked about like the performance there and the fact that he was intentionally sort of moving between all of these different characters because like the Son is this larger thing, but not only the Son, but like just introducing the Mortis gods that says that, oh, there's something else that's powerful beyond just Palpatine. But on top of that, you then have when Anakin is with the Father in the temple or the Citadel. He's talking to the Father, and the Father says that there are those who would like want to have our power, like take advantage of us, of my children. The Sith are but one. So again, that it's minimizing the Sith. And I think it's a really important marker because to that point, you think of Palpatine and the Sith as this like the greatest extreme of evil or the dark side within Star Wars. And then to say to other them, to sort of push them to the side as like not the biggest concern here is a really important choice on George and Dave's part, especially now that we're coming back around to this in canon.
Did you like how inside of the Citadel there was world between world gates?
That always is so insane to me. It makes me think about like, because also this is somewhat a tangent, but it's just like me pondering about Dave Filoni's mind because he has all of this Ahsoka art that he's done, and like people would be like, "Oh, when is this piece of art going to show up in canon?" And it always does at some point, and it's stuff that he made years ago. And so it makes me wonder, like, how long has the like at least the visual iconography of the world between worlds been this idea that's been planning and like just waiting to be introduced? It makes me sometimes also kind of wonder, like, had the Clone Wars not been canceled when it was, like, would that have been when it would have been introduced before it ended up being introduced in Rebels? I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think Rebels was the right time for it.
I do agree. Yeah,
but the thing is the world between worlds is a vergence. He often describes it more and more like the wood between worlds in, of course, Narnia. With the pools, right? Like if you've ever read The Magician's Nephew, you can like, you know, picture the pools being like the world between world gates. But that is just one sort of gateway into the Force. We have the tree on Dagobah. We have the Mortis location. We have Exegol, right?
Yeah.
They're actually all over the place, and they show up a lot in the written, like in the novels. Acto is a vergence in the Force. These places that are deeply connected with the Force, where you basically can exist without, you know, outside of space and time. And
Lothal as well.
Lothal, yeah, like where that temple was specifically one, but also they travel through Lothal on the wolves, a bunch which travel through the Force. This is going to be something we're going to bring up again. Yeah.
Oh my god.
So it's like, okay, what are you saying? Because not only in the world between worlds, but he pulls her out of that moment, you know, in that fight between Vader, and pulls her out, and then suddenly she's on Lothal with him once they escape the world between worlds. This is something that is very consistent too, that they've really started to introduce multiple times. So when you are experiencing Force visions, you are there.
Yes. And this is kind of where things start getting really trippy and weird.
Yeah, we're gonna get a little weird. So try and keep up. And if you can't, it's okay.
I think just like diving in at this point is
let's go.
The best way. So essentially, hyperspace and the world between worlds are the same thing. At the very least, they're inherently connected. And the way that we know this
is inherently connected to the Force.
So essentially, like on sticking with Rebels, when they travel across the fall to a different hemisphere on the Wolves, you get a glimpse of Ezra experiencing this. And the tunneling effect is the same as when you're in hyperspace. And then when the Wolves are walking, you see this like almost water effect where they're like pause as if they're walking through puddles, which you see when you're in the world between worlds. When you're walking on those bridge things, they have the same effect when your feet are touching that in both Ahsoka and in Rebels when we see the world between worlds. And it also has that star effect where you're in space, which when you're actually in the world between worlds, but you also see it earlier in Rebels when Ezra connects to Yoda and he speaks to Yoda on Dagobah.
Yoda says,
and it's just,
is that what you see? Because again, this is like Ezra's view of the Force.
But it's also interesting because in The Rise of Skywalker, when Rey, before, like when she hears all of the voices of the Jedi in that like space shot, that's supposed to be her connecting to the world between worlds. So we're having like similar reoccurring images of what that means.
Basically, you're one with the galaxy. That is what it is saying. Like in that and one thing I didn't talk about at the start of this, which is the Force is, in a Jungian terminology, the collective unconscious, and is as powerful as people would like to imagine the collective unconscious is, / more powerful, right? Because you can actually use it to obey your commands if you have the Force.
And that's why vergences are so important, because whenever a character comes in contact with one, they're having a Force vision. They're having some sort of deep connection to the collective unconscious of the entire universe, of the entire Force. And so we see that with like Luke on Dagobah in the cave where he sees Vader, but then it's actually himself. A more recent example from canon would be the for all the Acolyte fans out there, would be the Wayseeker book, which is a prequel sort of post the main like High Republic stuff, but before the Acolyte, with Vernestra, and it explains and it shows you like why she's so hesitant about going into hyperspace. And it's because when she's in hyperspace, it triggers her to have really powerful Force visions, and it's only when she's in hyperspace. And on top of that, if you look at the visual dictionary for The Rise of Skywalker, you get a look at all of the Jedi texts that Rey took off of Octo, and in them there is a lot of detail.
And Raylos have pointed this out for years. This is like the chain world theorem is basically the world between worlds. This idea that like multiple things are connected in the Force.
It's the chain worlds theorem, also known as the world between worlds or the Vergence scatter. Yeah. And Vergence scatter is really key to stuff that we're going to talk about, because essentially I think like the easiest way to get all of this, like what's going on with the Force, is to sort of give it a timeline and like a language to look at it chronologically. So I would say, so like I remember.
So what do we have? So we have a Vergence scatter. So obviously, like scatter to me makes me think of like a shotgun blast, or
like if you're throwing like a bag of marbles, and they like
something, and they've just kind of like spread across the galaxy. We have the rot, right, and then we have a person that Mace Windu says, "You think he could be a Vergence in the Force?" In the shape of Anakin.
Yes. Oh, it's so To explain, I think the timeline stuff gets really important. So
we don't have a lot on when it started. We do have when it wasn't there.
We have like it's a theory, but it's a very strong theory. I would argue.
We're getting into speculation theory time because of certain things that have been written at certain times.
Yes. Okay. So for each of the sequel trilogy movies, they had specific other published material, canon material that would be sort of put out as like in conjunction with the film and as sort of like promotion for the film, like it's all tied together. And so for The Force Awakens, the most prevalent for that would be the Aftermath trilogy, which we will get to. But then for
was
the Last Jedi,
or lead up to the Last Jedi,
was the lead up to the Last Jedi was the Legends of Luke Skywalker was one of those novels.
Yeah,
and it's a sort of to me it reminded me of Hyperion, but that's just like another example of the Canterbury Tales, which is like a bunch of stories within one larger story. And some of them are like pretty much made up, sort of like they're just like they're myths, they're stories, and then other ones.
My favorite Star Wars book.
You got so excited when I mentioned this to you. It was so much fun.
but even like because I interviewed Ken Liu. This was my first author interview. This is the first ever one that I did. So you have to go back to 2018 and listen to me talking to Ken Liu. I have since had him back on the podcast to talk about mythology and how mythology is created and things like that. And that was a super interesting conversation. But he knows something that he was not able to indicate 100%. But like he had a lot of creative freedom, especially like Fishing in the Deluge. He understood what they were trying. Fishing in the Deluge is sort of like a retelling of The Last Jedi from a weird lens. I love Lugubrious Moat. Like I could go on and on about how iRobot or iDroid is a retelling of sort of the original trilogy. Like there's like, you know, it's just really, really fascinating how he's viewed these ideas and then played with concepts to give them more depth because you're telling them in a new way. But there is a story that always confused me. It's called The Big Inside.
Yes. And so I was like also kind of like when I was reading it the first time, like there was like some I was like, oh, I'm having a lot of fun with this. But I was also kind of like, like sort of taken aback when I was reading Bigger Inside until like all of these things just started like connecting. And then I was sort of taken aback by like, they're doing something huge here with this story. Like the Legends of Luke Skywalker, I would argue is probably one of the most important pieces of canon for this one story alone. But it does even start with
but it's not canon. They get away with it because it's not canon, Hannah. It's a legend.
Yes. Okay. So that's the thing. Like in terms of like canon published work, this is like a necessary read in my opinion. But it's like oh man, it's such a good read. Oh my. So The Fishing in the Deluge, though, I think is a good place to start because it's when I started asking more questions about the Force. Because even like having watched The Last Jedi, I was kind of like looking at it with still a more like contained lens because I still had
the Force as the tide in it.
Yes. And like this, and that's like really where I started reframing my view because prior, like I hadn't really dipped my toes into much of the extended material that had been put out until this one. And then I was like, oh, I need to read more. And so basically in Fishing in the Deluge, Luke visits this planet called Luell, and the community that lives there is connected to the Force, which they call the Tide. But they do not practice wielding it. And this is like a really big thing for them. So they have a matriarch of the society, and like Luke kind of starts to learn from her, and she sort of tells Luke about their people's history. And she mentions that before there were even Jedi, their ancestors came to the planet for refuge. And long before they came to Lowell, our ancestors had learned how to ride the tide. For a time, they were the brightest stars in the galaxy, drawing the interest of those who loved power and sought my ancestors' aid in their on their quest for it, for more of it. Some of my ancestors succumbed to the temptation and believed that they could master a force that sustained the very fabric of existence. Others believed that it was impossible as well as morally repugnant to try and turn the tide, the ether that connects everything to everything else, into an instrument for domination. The war between them brought great suffering and devastation. Devastated 1,000 worlds before it finally burned out. And then a little ways after that, Luke says, "Your people are afraid of the dark side," and then she says, "We don't think of the tide in that way. The ebb and flow are phases of one tide, not two opposed sides. To use the tide is to pervert it." So essentially, like, what's being suggested here is that to try and use it, that is what is wrong.
Yeah.
If you leave it alone,
Jedi and Sith and
Mhm.
wielders of the
wielders,
Yeah.
that is what is wrong. That is the problem. If you leave it be, if you don't touch it, it remains in balance, and everything is as it should be. And they don't view it as light versus dark. And so this is like something I hadn't considered, is like other ways of perceiving the Force, which you would actually think like makes sense that there would be other cultures and stuff that would have other belief systems around the Force.
And they really introduced a lot of this in that time period. Like new lenses, although they had introduced like Force magic in the Clone Wars and
Sure.
that culture that Jar Jar hung out with that
Yes.
had their own view of like the Force and magic and things like that.
And they also, I think I remember reading that they also don't like the idea of using the Force.
Yeah.
They like to leave it alone, which is another kind of reoccurring thing. Like, why is it that using the Force is a problem?
Yeah.
And the bigger inside is something that I think answers that question. So basically it's a really weird story. This like biologist,
Luke meets up with a biologist who then they travel inside of an exogorth and get stuck.
Yeah. And they follow these like glowing markings that they can't read what they say, but there's like one like word that Luke can kind of translate that means mist, but they don't understand anything else. And they're just kind of following. And the exogorth there, like, has
different like biomes basically in it, right? So it's they in a way it's interesting. They travel back in time, like from a like if you're like going to a museum and you're like you're starting at the modern age and you're going back and you're like, and then there's animals and then there's forests and then there's swamp, and then at the start they see these 3 statues that are held, and I forget how they're described. They're like looking up, or they aren't moving, right? But as they approach, they start to move / interact.
It's like Luke, she's like, the biologist is like really wary about all of this, but Luke is like, because of they like sort of connect with him in the Force, and so he like reaches out to like touch, and then the same sort of statue effect on them happens to Luke, and then he like mentally gets basically like all of this information downloaded,
data download,
his mind, pretty much. And
what do we find out? We find out
we get the most insane stuff. Oh my god! So we find out that these 3 beings, their original time, they're aliens except for one of them who's a human, and they come their time that they came from was an eon ago, which is like the furthest back, I think, even compared to the EU, that anything in Star Wars has ever like really referred to. We'll get into kind of like the nature of these 3 mistweavers is what they're called, into the nature of kind of what they do and their relationship with the Force. But what's really kind of key here timeline wise is this moment here where they're sort of like they're observing Luke, And they say they call him a bright mist heart or a bright heart. And they're like he's more brilliant than 1,000 suns, and they've never seen a bright heart like this in a long time. And they just sort of sit and admire him.
Yeah.
They sit and they admire Luke. And then they sense something. I sense a rot in the mist. It had been millennia since we last gazed outside the cocoon into the grand, mist-filled universe. There are so many holes in the mist. A darkness has come and corrupted it. Bright heart means to restore the beauty of the mist. And so this is where like that rot comes from. And this is so important.
After Palpatine.
Yes, this is after, this story takes place after Return of the Jedi.
And it could mean, like, they could have meant, like, I guess Snoke. They could have meant what they were working on in this idea. But it has been since before with the prequels.
Yeah.
Since before. And so, like, how far
even
back does it go?
And, like, even if it's, like, referring to the existence that, like, things like Palpatine, or not Palpatine, Snoke can still exist. Like those kinds of darkness can still exist post Palpatine. It means that like there's something else going on. That's the reason why this can continue to keep happening.
Yeah, there's a reason why the darkness is it's like a black hole. And
I guess like the best way to view this is like for context with the Fishing in the Deluge, where Elder Kyla tells Luke about the origin of her people. They were refugees from a war and came to that world before Jedi even existed. Now, in canon, and also kind of reiterated by James Mangold talking about his movie and the introduction of the Dawn of the Jedi era.
Yeah, which uses
Lucasfilm,
the symbol
the Prime
in
Jedi.
Acto.
Yeah, the Prime Jedi symbol. That his movie is supposed to take place 25,000 years before the Phantom Menace. And in canon, the start of the Old Republic, like everything that's Old Republic and the origin of the Jedi, that is all 25,000 years before the Phantom Menace. And that this is where like key references to time periods is really important, because there's another. So here in Bigger Inside, we learned that these people, they came from an eon ago, and and based on what they say, an eon ago, there was no rot. The mist was like, it was beautiful, it was luminous, there was nothing wrong with it. And periodically, like, because they get trapped in the Exogorth, and so they like weave the force in a way that allows them to be like kind of cocooned in time so that they can preserve their life. And every once in a while they'll like peek outside of their cocoon and like see what's kind of going on, particularly when there are visitors and like other people who get trapped inside of the Exogorth. And the last time they did this, before this time with Luke, was a millennia ago. And so they have the reference point of an eon ago, a millennia ago, and right now after Return of the Jedi. And compared to...
Well, sometime between Palpatine's death and Return of the Jedi. Because
sometime between...
In that 30-year period.
Yes, in the 30-year period between...
Maybe. This is, again, a legend.
Yeah, it's complicated. But, like, after Palpatine's death on the Death Star, too. They are saying that
these legends are like him adventuring when he's trying to figure out his Jedi-ness after.
Yeah. It's like all of the, I want to discover more about the Jedi stuff.
More about the Force, and basically how he ends up on Acto, because he's looking for the source of the Jedi.
And so this time period where Luke is doing all of this, compared to the last time they checked a millennia ago, there is now a rot in the mist.
Yeah.
There are so many holes in it. There are holes in the Force, because the mist is their word for the Force, like the tide is another word for it. So there are so many holes in the Force, and a darkness has come and corrupted it. And that is different from, that was not the case a millennia ago or an eon ago. And so what happened from a millennia ago to now? And now a millennia is kind of like a really broad sort of term, because like a millennium is like 10,000 years.
Yeah.
but like a millennia is
anytime
up
to a million.
Yeah. So that's like it's like a very broad, expansive time. So as we like sort of chart this timeline, and we're going further back in history, we have 25,000 years ago is when the Jedi started, and that is a millennia ago. There's also another really key and important piece of canon that references like these kinds of timeline events, which is Thrawn Alliances, which is a book where Thrawn, it's sort of like it's two timelines, kind of like it's Thrawn in the present time with Vader, but then also telling like Thrawn in the past with Anakin.
Yep.
And this is so crazy because you don't think about it at the time, like because it takes place on Batuu. And so when it's being published, you look at it as like, oh,
this is a tie-in to Galaxy's Edge.
It's just a promo for their theme park. But and like, yes, it is, but it's more than that, because basically like they're on Batuu, which is a planet kind of like on the outskirts of the unknown regions.
Yep.
And Thrawn's basically explaining, because obviously the Chiss, like they are from the unknown regions, and Thrawn's explaining to Vader one of these like alien species there, because they live on like the edge. And what Thrawn explains, basically tells him, is that a millennia ago, a chain of supernova explosions went off around the edge of where the unknown regions are now, which sent moon and planet-sized masses across the galaxy.
Yep.
A chain of supernova explosions sent planets and moons flying across the galaxy.
Yep.
And that is what created the unknown regions.
Yeah. And if you look at the map, it looks like a friggin' yin yang now.
So it's like, that's not natural. A chain of supernova explosions?
Yeah. Flinging planets.
Like a scatter?
Weird.
And a millennia ago.
Yeah.
So a millennia ago, there wasn't a rot, and then a chain of supernova explosions happened. What could have happened there?
Yeah.
And so then you also look at like this. So basically the theory, putting the two dots together. I'm
connecting those dots. You're not connecting shit. No. Seriously, it's consistent.
So like the war that Elder Kayla is telling Luke happened, that happened before the Jedi, which was a millennia ago, because we know when that happened. We know when the Jedi were formed. So there was a war a millennia ago that devastated 1,000 worlds.
Yeah.
A chain of supernova explosions flinging planets definitely sounds like devastation of 1,000 worlds to me.
Yep.
And so then you're like, okay, so a war happened, but this isn't just any kind of like regular war, because we're flinging planets now.
Yeah.
And we're triggering supernova explosions.
And it's caused a rot.
And it's caused a rot in the Force. And so like going back to Mortis, the daughter, so like in the EU, they call the Mortis gods, like they're like Celestials are like descendants of Celestials. So like they basically are gods, but I don't think that's never actually said in Mortis. Like they're called Mortis gods later, but that's like a interpretation by like the Jedi later on of them. So that I don't actually think that they're Celestials or they're actual gods, because the daughter says that
they're
we are
symbols.
Guardians. Yeah. And they're archetypes.
They're archetypes.
and I think that because the daughter says on Mortis to Anakin that they are the guardians of the power, and the father says that you don't know like what pain it is to love your children so much, but to know that they could tear the fabric of the universe or the galaxy apart. And he tells Anakin that because of their power, that was the reason why they had to withdraw from the physical universe, and that's why they came to Mortis as anchorites. So I think that however the Mortis gods, however the ones got their powers and became archetypes for the Force, and now have the ability to tear the universe apart, I think that is the thing that would have, like, I think the supernova explosions, this war and stuff, and the like what Elder Kayla talks about, and like the people wanting to search for power, like wanting to gain more power by using the Force, and going to them to learn in order to get more power. This like power struggle going on, this lust for power, the seeking out of power. The basically, I think the Bortus ones were involved in that, and they are somehow involved in what triggered the supernova explosions. I think their abilities is what's triggered that, and in the process of that,
yeah, it would be interesting if Force wielders were that powerful to begin with.
Now, that is really, really interesting that you're saying that, because this is where the bigger inside gets even more weird.
Yeah,
because so far we're using the Mistweavers as a timeline to give us a timeline, but their ability and their connection with the Force, and again, this is like millennia ago, or not millennia, this is an eon ago that they originated from. Their time
How long
period.
is it eon, Hannah?
1 billion years.
Yep.
In eon is 1 billion. These three Mistweavers are from 1 billion years ago, and essentially,
they could be estimating. It could be
many
millions of years.
Yeah, significantly enough to differentiate from the millennia ago, for that to be its own time frame for them.
Yes.
So, like we said at the beginning, when Luke and the biologist they're like going through the Exogorth and they're following these markings, and they're glowing markings like these. This art stuff, it glows, and the glowing signs appear several times. Sometimes they were like just like sort of like words, glyphs or whatever. Other times they're like more extravagant, like murals essentially. And then they're described as these tapestries of light were both map and territory. And then this is like them perceiving of this. And then later when we actually get inside of the Mistweavers' like minds, they were master weavers of the luminous mist, and their art was to knot and entwine the strings of mist that cradled all the sentient species and connected the far-flung worlds to one another to create glowing portraits of the mist, all-encompassing magnificence. We traveled across the galaxy seeking out new wonders to be depicted on our loom to give the ineffable form and color. And now, so I'm really confused what this really means, like what their ability is, because it's not just we make art. This is like, no, we're mapping like the entirety of the Force, essentially, and how it connects to everything. And this is just, this is again like sort of like
it could be the hyperspace lanes.
I think that it is.
Yeah.
Because in Rebels, when Sabine and Ezra in season 4, when they encountered the Mortis gods mural on when the temple of Lothal is being excavated by the Empire, the mural has like obviously like the ones, but then Sabine like looks at it and she's like there's all the lines and the circles, and she calls it like a star map, but none that she's like seen before or recognized. And she says that like the lines are like the hyperspace lanes, and the circles are planets or doors. She says planets or doors, and they glow. The art glows. The art glows. And this isn't the only time that we see this kind of thing depicted. We also see it depicted again in the Rise of Skywalker visual dictionary with the chain worlds theorem, and the depiction of the hyperspatial way lines. And oh man, and it's okay.
It's gonna bother you when this episode came out too.
Sorry, what?
It's gonna bother you like when this episode was released.
Oh no, when did it release?
February 26th, 2018. So just after The Last Jedi.
Of course it did.
Yeah.
Of course it did.
Because these were releasing at the same time. I think people forget that this was all in the same, they're telling the same things, right?
And like, this is why the story group is so important, because the story group is the like the keepers of the lore.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to be talking about something, you need to, like, in your published Star Wars thing, you need to consult with them so that you're not making any mistakes. So that, like, everything's consistent, that there's not, like, any glaring contradictions.
They do let people tell their own stories. And
they do.
And for the most part, like, filmmakers especially have a lot more latitude, but they're consulted when it comes to key things like the Force.
And sometimes they will be asked to include things, and they'll be like, this is how you include it. Like, when you talk about this thing, this is how you can do it. And then you can have free reign in everywhere, but so that you know the way that you're supposed to talk about this thing. And so that's why, like, with The Legends of Luke Skywalker, even with Ken Liu having all of the creative freedom that he did, there was 100% a conversation with the story group that would have taken place.
Yeah.
Particularly around how he was talking about the Force. And I wouldn't be surprised if this whole thing where we get this, like, lore dump about the Mistweavers was not the story group being like, hey, so Lucasfilm needs us to start trickling in some specific information. So here's some stuff that you need to include, and you can choose how you do so. But this is information that needs to be communicated. So I don't know, like, so I don't know if they would have told him, like, eons ago, there was a culture that referred to the Force as the Mist, or more
I don't
likely,
know. It could have just been that he created all of that.
Yes,
right.
But
there is an idea that there were wielders of the Force that could shape the galaxy, or that were that powerful.
And, like, events potentially that to be, like, referred to within time in comparison, and particularly the Rot in the Mist.
Yeah, the Rot in the Mist is actually really consistent.
It's so consistent. It's okay. So it's like,
where else has it appeared, Hannah?
Okay, so get ready, because this is it's going to be a lot.
Let's list. Let's pull out the receipts.
Okay.
Yep. Cracks your finger, cracks your knuckles. Yep. Yeah, let's do it. Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, we've already listed off, like, a lot of things that, like, connect to this, like, refer, like, sort of correspond with, like, this origin point of when the Rot in the Mist would have come about. And also, like, this differentiating perspective of the Force and the light side and the dark side. This idea that, like, the Llewellyn people don't believe in the dark side as of a thing of, like, the dark side, but wielding it is the problem. And like the hyperspace lanes and stuff. And it just gets weirder from here. And I'm going to save some of the weirdest stuff for a little bit later. But so I mentioned we were going to come back to the Aftermath trilogy, and I think this is where, like, this is like some of the very first. I think actually the Aftermath might have been the first, like, published official, or, like, one of the officially, like, first pieces of canon, and a great trilogy, like, as its own thing. But it has, like, the most insane moments of, like, setup for stuff. A lot of it has to do with Palpatine and, like, what Palpatine's actual. Oh man, okay. I need to contain myself because there's just so much to unpack here. And, like, I'm getting excited talking about it. But so we're going to start with something a little bit simpler. So there's an interlude in Empire's End, I believe. Yes, it's Empire's End, the third book in the trilogy, and I think that would have come out because I think the second one came out in 2016. So the third one would have been coming out in probably 2017 or 2018, which is again around the time of The Last Jedi. And so there's an interlude in that book that takes place on Christophsis, which, if you remember from the Clone Wars movie, that's where, like, that opening battle and stuff takes place. And so there's this group of people. They're not all human. Some of them are aliens. And they are part of the Church of the Force. And they are on this pilgrimage to Christophsis because they have these kyber crystals, which were taken by the Emperor from the planet to like feed the Death Star, basically. And so now they're bringing them back to the planet and, like, returning them to where they originally came from. And this is a really dangerous journey for them. And there's a really interesting moment to start with, like, where it's very similar to the scene from Rebels with Bendu, where like he's talking to Kanan about the spiders. But basically, this one guy, they're being hunted by these beasts on Christophsis, and he's saying that we should hunt them down, we should kill them before they can do that to us, basically. And his companion is like, well, no, because they're also creatures in the Force the same as we are. And so this first guy, his response is, well, then they must be creatures of the dark side of the Force. And his companion, in response to that, says, well, maybe Bryn was right. Maybe there is no dark side. Maybe there is no dark side. And now this is really interesting because Bryn, this is a statement that is seemingly contradictory to what we know Bryn to believe, because Bryn, I forget his last name, he's the founder of the Church of the Force, and their scripture is the Journal of the Wills. And there's a scene in this interlude where one of the characters is watching this like hollow video of him reciting from the Journal of the Wills, which is something that has been reintroduced into canon. It was at the very opening of The Force Awakens novelization, there is a quote from the Journal of the Wills, and it's done in the style of chapter verse, almost like a Bible type of thing, which actually comes from, I think, the second script of Star Wars, where George Lucas included a Journal of the Wills chapter verse quote. And that was like the Son of Sons.
And in the novelization of A New Hope, he told it as part of the Journal of the Wills.
Yes. And like also around this like early time that we get like the Guardians of the Wills and Rogue One, this like very early Disney Lucasfilm Star Wars Disney era. And so the opening Journal of the Wills from The Force Awakens is, first comes the day, then comes the night. After the darkness shines through the light. The difference, they say, is only made right by the resolving of gray through refined Jedi sight. And so this becomes kind of key because there's a later point in the in the interlude where, like, so first off, we know that they reference, like, they go to the Journal of the Wills. So that excerpt from the Journal of the Wills from The Force Awakens shows like the acknowledgement of the light, the dark, and also they mention gray. And in this interlude, there is a quote. This character quotes Bryn, and he says, "All hail the light, the dark, and the gray." And so if that's a saying that Bryn says, "All hail the light, the dark, and the gray," then that seems contradictory to Bryn also believing that maybe there isn't a dark side. And the gray, like, that seems to be like, that's directly, I think, correlated to that opening excerpt from The Force Awakens where they reference gray. And so we have another instance of like this evolving perception of the Force where we're again being like, oh, there is no dark side. Like, maybe there isn't a dark side. And the question that we're having is there just like two different sort of warring definitions of the dark side? Like, is there a dark side that is, if you're going to give those labels of light and dark, that's just the natural life and death cycle of nature? The
down of the wave, right, versus the crest of the wave, right? Like the tide. And the scene in The Last Jedi where the mountain.
Yes, and the scene in The Last Jedi where like you see the bones of the decomposing body, but then like stuff grows from that, and so like death, destruction, but then new life. And then there's this other thing, the secret
third thing,
a secret third thing that seems to corrupt.
Yeah,
and basically the idea is that this rot in the Force specifically affects the dark side, where when you're talking about things like the Sith and Palpatine and their use of the dark side, their way of the dark side, that is something that is
and that is maybe as close as we can get to this cancer idea that the Reddit user pointed out, that there is
like the
something
the rot is the cancer
in the Force,
but it's not the dark side itself.
No,
that like there is a natural balance to everything. But this other thing is interfering with that balance. And so that's why it makes sense why the Welland people and other cultures in the galaxy view even the Jedi as being wrong and just simply wanting to wield the Force. Because if balance is what the true state of everything is, to be to use the dark side means that you're susceptible to being corrupted by this rot.
Oh, even using the light side. Even using the light side mean you're susceptible to the rot. Right?
Because
you have to be hyper vigilant to stay away from being corrupted by this rot.
And that's sort of like where that eventual dogma comes from.
Yes.
Because the Jedi are trying to avoid this thing, but it ends up actually meaning that they're just pushing themselves further towards it.
Yes.
And like, that's insane.
Okay,
and so
wait, quick recap. Okay. So rot in the Force, something that is beyond just the natural flow and state. And the dark side being like shadow versus light. And even when we talk about the Mortis gods, like the son isn't all evil and the daughter isn't all good. Like they're very much that yin yang balance idea. And it's way more of that, Tao Te Ching concept, right? Or the Tao, or the Tao. That flow, or the Prime Jedi idea. We can travel through hyperspace, which is also the Force, which is also connected to the world between worlds and the chain world theory. And we have these things that are vergences that may be connected to this event that caused the rot in the Force to begin with, whenever that happened. And chosen ones are vergences in the Force, thus meaning that they can travel through the Force, i.e., when you look at the Thrawn trilogy, the one that happens before, the Force travelers in that are little kids that are called Skywalkers. And so Anakin Skywalker being somebody who is a vergence, Rey, who takes on the name Skywalker, is part of a vergence with the dyad.
Yes. And that other half is Ben Solo, who is a descendant of Anakin.
Yes.
And that's where I think like the Skywalker bloodline particularly becomes really important, because like in the bigger inside, you have these Mistweavers fascinated by Luke.
Yeah.
And they've never seen a bright heart like him. And you're like, really? You've been around a really long time and you've never seen a single other bright heart like Luke. And I think it's because he's Luke Skywalker, son of Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
I think it's specifically that it's the Skywalker bloodline. And I think that another way of looking at this is like in Rebels, after Kanan dies, Ezra meets
a few years.
It's been a few years. Ezra meets this wolf called Doom. And Doom sort of like leads Ezra and like gives him like information that he needs, and like the plaque thing with the fists and the hand gestures, the and all that stuff. But then Ahsoka, he explains all this to Ahsoka in the World Between Worlds, and she says that basically her theory is that Doom, like Caleb Doom, Kanan's actual name, that this wolf is the continuation of Kanan's will in like the physical reality. Like that is a manifestation of Kanan in the physical reality. And so I think a way of looking at that for Anakin is like the Skywalker bloodline continuing is the continuation of Anakin's will in the physical universe, in the physical. And so that makes them really, really key and really, really important for some stuff that I'm going to get to. But because I promised MC that we were going to talk about string theory, we will have to talk a little bit about string theory. And this is why.
Okay. So, I didn't know why. So, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So there are the main pages of the visual dictionary for the Rise of Skywalker where you see the inside of the books. But then there's another page where you see the inside of the Ramagon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but the red book. And again, you see the chain worlds theorem thing, which is another thing that's like, if you line it up, it will line up with the galaxy map of where Exegol and Octu are. And you can sort of like vaguely pinpoint where certain other circles might line up with other planets. One of them is Luel, and it gets kind of weird there. But on the other page of that, in the tiny little bottom corner, there is these like two circle things, and there's a note that calls it bosonic diagrams. And bosonic refers to bosonic string theory, which I made lots of notes on. And so It's a form of string theory. They put string
the
theory,
physics string theory
of specifically
multiverse.
So bosonic string theory was the original form of string theory before. So it's basically, it doesn't work, and so they had to expand on it. But it's so particular that they're using bosonic to describe this, because basically in string theory, instead of like particles where they're like these like super small 1D strings that vibrate to like different frequencies, and that like it indicates like what it is. And so there's in this there's these things called bosons, which are like photons or like gravitons, like all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so and they also have this thing called a tachyon, which is basically, some sources call it like a particle that moves faster than light.
Yeah.
And the Wikipedia page, it says that like
that travels through time.
And like you can like use that to send messages like into the past.
Yeah.
But also like it's a whole other thing. But it's also specifically like it's a sign in the math that there is something unstable about what's going on. Because the thing with bosonic string theory is that it doesn't really work because because it doesn't take other things into account. But specifically, like basically with bosonic string theory, this is what you think you're doing. I don't know if you can see that. I have visual aids for MC.
You think you're in the bottom of a
fishbowl
or a fishbowl,
but you're actually you think you put this marble at the bottom of the fishbowl, but actually what you did is you put it on top of a hill. And so tachyon condensation is when condensation or whatever is when the marble wants to roll down the hill, because what it wants is like the lowest level of energy is like this baseline thing. And if you're at the top of the hill, then you're not there. And so you're seeking it. So you have to roll down to get to the bottom. So basically all of this like string theory stuff that I still don't completely comprehend basically is describing an unstable universe.
Yeah.
But bosonic string theory is basically just an unstable universe.
Yeah. So
there in the Jedi texts, there's diagrams that represent an unstable universe. What would make sense for an unstable universe other than something where the force is the thing that, connects everything, the ether, the fabric of reality, time, space, everything has a rot in it. I think that sounds pretty unstable.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
That's just, yeah.
Okay. So this is literally like if we were like, mystery solvers or detectives, we're like, there is a hole in the middle of the donut, and then inside of the donut, there's another hole. There is something wrong with the galaxy. Fundamentally, that is the story that has been told since George was around, and it is consistently applied. The Force has also been consistently applied to say it works in a particular way. And there is a difference between what balance in the sort of grand scheme of things could represent and what exists now, which is there's a rot in the center of the Force.
There is there's something that is fundamentally wrong with the Force, with the universe, so that it's almost impossible for like balance to be achieved because of the rot. That is why, even though Palpatine was defeated, that's why he came back. That's why Snoke was a thing before that. It's why the Empire was able to persist the way that it did.
It's like original sin in a way. Like if you had to put it in a different religious context, there is an original sin or an original thing that has caused the endless Star War.
And I think that there's that we can see some of and this is just like, this gets really interesting because when you go back to like when Lucasfilm was bought by Disney, George Lucas had treatments for stories that he wanted to tell. And there's this like weird transition period between those treatments being
the Cara treatments.
The Cara treatments, like that early stuff.
Treatments.
And then getting to what ended up being The Force Awakens. And there's like art that represents this sort of shift. So like in the archives, the Star Wars archives, episodes 1 to 3, I think is where George actually talks about what his plans would have been. It's this whole thing where like Leia would have ended up being the chosen one because she helps maintain the galaxy, and then like Maul's there and he's training Talon. Like Talon is his apprentice, but then that's also like only that amount. We also have other things that George has said about like his trilogy, like having to do with the microbiotic world and like the wills and getting back into that like the smaller DNA of the universe, basically. Like not necessarily physically going there, but like
no, but like that
we're not like getting tiny.
Important,
but that it's like important to the story. So it's not like we know absolutely everything, but there's this art of Talon with this shadowy being that is, I don't think that's Maul. We'd have just drawn Maul, but this shadowy being behind her that's called Uber, which is like the largest, the biggest
sort of thing,
and this like dark thing behind her that's like kind of like guiding her, controlling her, like her master, so to speak. And so that's one indication of this thing that is like causing all of these issues. But there are a couple, there's another from this like really early time period. And so I want to walk you through this for anyone who isn't aware and like hasn't read the art books for The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. So in the Force Awakens, the art of The Force Awakens, you see like all of the early ideas, and in the foreword, it's clear that like they were thinking about the Force when they like first got like, oh, we're going to be doing a new trilogy. So what is the Force? Like, what is the nature of the Force was like their primary question. But you see all of these like ideas that they were sort of sifting through and like throwing out there and all this stuff. And one of them is a ghost of Anakin Skywalker. Yeah. And the ghost is described by McCraig as, if we see Anakin Skywalker because he does flow, if we see Anakin Skywalker because he does flow back and forth between Darth Vader and Anakin, let's see him as a character with a dark and light side. The reason Luke is this whole new entity is he was the first to acknowledge his own dark side. That it was not separate from him. So they're talking about this idea of Anakin as like
he can be Vader on command, basically.
Yes,
that's the idea.
And that is the idea. And this is canon now. This is like we've seen this.
It happened in Ahsoka in the World Between Worlds. He shifted and used his dark side. His dark side to show her dark side so that she could have a union of opposites, an apotheosis moment to realize that she was heading down a bad path, she was very stuck.
Yes. And so this is an example of these early ideas they were coming up with being things that were clearly important.
Back to.
And they're still calling back to.
Yeah. And
so there's this other detail and this is still somewhat connected because they were really doing this thing with the idea of Luke being haunted by some kind of ghost. Like really early on. And so so Alsman is saying this about it for the Luke Ghost 1 art. We've seen dead Jedi come back as blue ghosts. Maybe Sith can come back, and maybe there's some all-powerful mastermind Sith that's controlling whatever the dark side is. We did talk a lot about how the final battle frontier for Jedi might be in the spirit realm. In the spirit realm, so you have to have a bad guy ghost. Now, George has made it clear that Sith can't have Force ghosts. That's why he deleted like Bane and stuff from the Mortis.
Yeah, but yet we got Night Sister ghosts.
Yes, and Anakin to a degree.
Yeah,
is still that. So, but regardless of that, what's really key here is this idea that they were already talking about some bad guy entity controlling whatever the dark side is. And so that sounds to me like something causing the rot. Someone causing the rot. And then this idea that like the final battle frontier is the spirit realm. And so this is also, I think, something that they've been really wanting to get around to, is because, I mean, you could look at that as being like, oh, well, that's kind of like in The Rise of Skywalker where Rey is like all the Jedi and they like all reach out to her and she like is all the Jedi and uses all of this power to defeat Palpatine. I mean, kind of, but I actually think it's more than that, because I don't know if you've heard like the rumors that had been going around about like plans for like a 10, 11, 12, like a new trilogy, and that at the end of it would like culminate into something big, and it would bring back old characters. I think that means we're going to see the battle frontier of the Jedi in the spirit world, which means Anakin Skywalker and Mark Hamill back as Luke.
Interesting.
And possibly like Mace, we could see Mace Windu, we could see Qui-Gon Jinn, we could see Obi-Wan, we could see all of the actors they've already been bringing back for stuff.
I think that's what they wanted to have happen with The Rise of Skywalker, like that sort of idea.
And I think that they
I don't know. I don't know if they'll be able to do that successfully in now, like time has passed.
But that's why I'm kind of wondering if that's why they're doing Ahsoka the way that they're doing Ahsoka. But I also think that's why the Hunt for Ben Solo was so important, because I think it was going to set up a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Like particularly because like
how much effort was put into it really makes me think that it was a cornerstone to the story.
100%. And if we look at like and we've already been talking about how like leading up to movies, a lot of the supplementary material like comics and books would be like tying into what would be going on movie wise in some capacity. So like with like The Force Awakens, it was all the stuff in Empire that was Empire's End and all of that, like building up like Palpatine and his plans and something else going on.
And even Rebels itself tied into
and Rebels itself,
The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. And
like Legends of the Skywalker, like all of that stuff is connecting there. And so timeline wise for what was going on with the Hunt for Ben Solo, it would either be coming out, I think it would have been filming this year. And me and you talked about this, where we think it was probably supposed to have been announced at
Star Wars
Celebration.
Yep.
In Japan, and it would have been filming this year. Same thing with like Starfighter, like it would have been, they both would have been filming this year. And so that means that it probably would have come out 2026 if we're being optimistic, but more than likely 2027, which would line up with the anniversary. But with that timeline in mind, with it being filmed this year, what's also coming out right now is the Legacy of Vader comics.
Yeah.
And Charles Soule is a creative consultant at Lucasfilm.
Yep.
So he's not just a guy who writes comics for them sometimes. He's been elevated to a really crucial role.
Well, he participated a lot in like creative brainstorming for the Acolyte because of his role within the High Republic, as well as the connection to the Knights of Ren. And then, you know, his feelings on Ben Solo and how much he's written him. Like, I definitely think that there's a tie there. Yeah.
And he's written like a lot of Vader.
Yeah.
And you can see like the way that these like two things like really coalesce in the Legacy of Vader series. But I mean, in the more recent
Kylo's
issues,
going into the Force.
He's going to he shows up to the netherworld of the Force. He breaks into heaven accidentally, and there's a very key panel where, like, first off, there's a conversation between him and Luke, where Luke is like, "Kylo Ren means nothing to me, but I'll always be there for Ben," which like ties into his thing in The Last Jedi where he's like, "See you around, kid." And then like there's also like a last like line panel where it's like, death is part of the journey or something like that. Or so it seems like very heavily, and like lots of places have started to like speculate with like new context. Like this seems like something that would have been tying very heavily into the Hunt for Ben Solo stuff we would have seen. And again, it sets up this idea of like, oh, so all of these Jedi are just like chilling inside of this netherworld. And if something were to happen, could they show up again as Force ghosts or to fight something within the netherworld of the Force itself?
Maybe.
I don't know. And so what is this bad guy then that is causing or this antagonistic entity? Because antagonistic, I think, is less morally labeling than villain is, or like
something
bad guy.
That
I think
is
antagonist
influencing everything. Yeah.
Like, what is causing this rot in the Force? What is this thing that potentially everyone will have to face to save the galaxy?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, okay, now we're entering definitely into the realm of speculation because we have no proof. This all this so far has been, this is canon, guys. This is stuff that's happened.
And I haven't even mentioned the stuff in the High Republic yet.
Yeah.
Do you want me to get into that first?
I mean, quickly, if you can just be like, hey, this is repeated.
Okay, so sort of like the main threat at a certain point with the High Republic for like phases 1 and 3 is that it is actually not, well, it's denial, but like what they're doing is tapping into something else, because they get these like beasts called the Nameless, and well, they're being called the Nameless, and they seemingly are like really, really bad, and they do this like calcinating thing to a Jedi where like they consume the Force out of him, and then he like turns into like a statue that like partially disintegrates, and then this thing is called a blight, and then it starts to happen like all over the place, like all across the galaxy, this thing, and it starts to like suck the Force out of the planet itself and all the people there, and it's incredibly destructive. And the reason why all this happens is because they take these creatures off of the Nile take these creatures off of this planet called Planet X. It's also called Sophros, that had been recently discovered, and it is like a vergence, and it's like they describe it like a pearl developing around a grain of sand, where this like planet is like half light, half dark, and it's like built around this vergence, and it like naturally keeps itself in balance because these creatures like eat the light and they eat the dark, so that one doesn't get stronger than the other, and then it just maintains balance. And then because all of these creatures were taken off the planet, it was like basically near doom, and even though the planet brought more eggs, it would take a really long time for them to hatch, and so it would be too late by the time that they do, before the galaxy would be destroyed by the blight. And so these two characters, Alzar and Enzar, their names are a little confusing. This girl and this guy, and they're like in love, but they're Jedi, so that's like complicated. And like one of them, he like leans a little bit more to the dark side, and she's more to the light. And they have these like this like special connection between them. And so basically, like they had this moment of like a realization. So like they kiss, and then they're like, now we're never going to see each other again, because you, dark side guy, are going to go to the top of the planet where it's light, because you need to stay there and meditate there. And then me, light side girl, I'm going to stay in at the bottom of the planet, in this inside in the dark place, because I'm the light. And then we're gonna, like a yin yang, we're going to maintain balance on this planet for the rest of our lives until like these creatures can repopulate naturally and continue to do that. So that's like the big thing. That is the big culmination of the High Republic.
Goddamn.
And so I think that it's not just this planet. Like I think this planet is like one manifestation of like the rot. It's like one example of it. I don't think it's the end all be all. I think it's one example, because it's so many holes that exist. And I think so, but it's like yet again, like a really recent, huge initiative around storytelling. And so that goes, so just like a recap to throw that in there for anyone who hasn't like gotten into the High Republic. Important stuff is happening. So yeah, like, so who is causing this? We've had this conversation, and the only thing that we can come to is, and I think you phrased it really well, is like, with this being like the collective unconscious, like, what is the thing that's missing from the collective? What is missing?
I did an episode on this. The missing divine feminine of the galaxy.
Because
it's literally the thing that causes all of the problems for the Skywalkers. Yeah. They're like Anakin losing his mother, losing Padme, losing Ahsoka. And Anakin is being the chosen one, or this vergence of the Force, is like the representative of the Force's problems. And we see that play out in Mortis psychologically, in how he deals with things within Mortis. And so I did an episode a long time ago on how I thought that Anakin was very Shiva-like from, a storytelling perspective with my good friend Susan Bailey. She's amazing. We talked a lot about Hinduism and the influences on the story. Choosing a woman's name as Padme to be his like wife, his love, all of that is very purposeful. Specifically comes from the jewel in the lotus saying within the idea that it is, she represents like this ultimate thing that grows from the darkness and turns into a flower. And in Hinduism, Shiva has a wife. That wife is, of course, Parvati, when she is a mortal. She doesn't realize she's actually a goddess. And then she ascends when she dies and becomes sort of in her goddess nature, but sort of gets stuck occasionally in her avenging goddess as Kali. And essentially she just becomes destruction for evil things. And the only way that she can be kind of pulled out of it is by Shiva pulling her out of it very specifically, usually involving sex.
True. But what's really key about that too is that like she gets into that state of like destruction to destroy like demons, but when she consumes, like there's this one demon, I cannot pronounce his name, but basically what happens is if he bleeds and his blood touches the ground, he'll like multiply. And so they're all like overwhelmed by this because they keep like getting him, but then he just multiplies more because his blood. And so she like consumes all of the blood before it can touch the earth, and she eventually defeats him. But like after doing this, she's like
an endless rage.
She's in an endless rage, and what she's doing in this endless rage is potentially going to destroy the universe, which is why it's so important that Shiva stops her.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, I do think I'm not the biggest fan of Aboleth because I don't necessarily think that she's like what the story is saying. I do think that the missing mother of Mortis is a legitimate thing. Right? Where is the missing feminine in the galaxy? The mother. When you actually think about the Force, they describe it in two ways. There is the living force, and then there's the cosmic force, right? And the cosmic force is always this idea of like the thinker of the Force or the father of the Force, right? I can see everything. I have the plan. But the living force is this very basic natural idea, like in everything is surrounded by everything. And you have to listen to the living force to actually understand where you actually are in everything. And that very much ties to common feminine ideas within gods and mythology, like Gaia, like Mother Nature, like Demeter, like this idea that there is a creative energy, a life-giving, death-giving energy that is fundamental to how the Force operates, but that many people have forgotten how to listen to. And so the mother of the Force, the feminine energy of the Force, is missing from the galaxy, or sick, or in a rage, or stuck in the dark side.
And if we like tie this back to the Mortis gods, the mother is missing from the family. And so like what you're saying is like basically like Ahsoka probably is leading towards the mother, but you don't think it's going to be Abeloth the way that she is in the EU. You think it's going to be...
She was a powerful character who was a stepmother to the Mortis kids. Essentially, she missed her own family and so adopted the kids to like take care of them. I think legitimately there's a missing mother figure in the galaxy.
And this gets like, it gets so interesting because like,
this is again, we know speculation because we don't have a lot of evidence this is going to be the thing that happens.
Yeah. But we know that
there's something wrong with the Force.
There's something wrong with the Force. There's probably something that causes that thing that's wrong with the Force.
Yes. And it ties back archetypically to the general problems that happen within the Skywalker line. And so to move past the problems of the Skywalker line, how do you do that? Well, you solve those problems. Even archetypically with Force gods and everything else.
And I think like we're probably going to see like a lot more of this in Ahsoka season 2. Season 1 brought forth a lot of like information. Like we're clearly we're introducing this idea of there's something else out, like another galaxy. This is something that's been set up for a very long time in canon before this. In Empire's End, particularly, they set up that Palpatine has been searching for something. This he called it the origin of the dark side, and he thinks that it's where all of his power comes from, and
it was calling to him,
and it was calling to him,
mm-hmm.
and he needs to. So that's why he creates all these observatories. So like we see in Battlefront 2, Luke goes to one with Del, and there's also one on Jakku, and they all have technology. Like they have multi-purpose, but they all have technology on them that charts courses throughout the hyperspace lanes in all different directions, and it's because he's trying to find his way out of the galaxy to the thing that's calling to him. And so what the issue ends up being is trying to get through the unknown region safely, which is part of why he kept Thrawn around, because a lot of Thrawn's knowledge of the unknown regions went into the technology. And so we're seeing this come to fruition, this idea of like, yeah, there's something out there beyond our galaxy.
And also, like, there was a reason why Thrawn and the witches wanted to leave.
Yes, that's a big one.
They wanted to leave that planet so fast.
And Baylan, something's calling to Baylan. He says to Shin, like, can't you hear it? Can't you feel it? And she can't. And that's also really key, because in the Tarkin novel, is also, or was it the Tarkin novel? No, I think that was, I think it's still Empire's End, where it says that basically Vader couldn't sense whatever it was the Palpatine did. And so neither apprentice can sense what their master is calling out to their master. Yeah. And now this is something where like, it does sound a little bit like Abeloth to me, in the sense that like in the Fate of the Jedi books, when Abeloth starts like doing her thing, she can like psychically connect with people and like call out to them and communicate. And she starts
I just don't think that they're going to go down the path of making her
specifically what her origins are, who she is in the EU.
Yeah. I just think she's just going to be the mother of the Force.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like Filoni doing his own thing, like his own, like what the mother is to him, and like his version of the mother.
Damn cool if they got Padme to play, like,
Natalie Portman to come back. Oh my god,
yeah, it'd be really cool.
It's so interesting though, because
like the feminine in the collective unconscious is angry.
And then like also like when you think about like bringing the Night Sisters into this, and then like the fact that the ones have a presence on Peridia. Also, it brings questions into like with the Zepho from the Jedi series, because some of their stuff and one of their sages, there's like stuff about him. I don't know if that's like a unintentional like art mistake, but like why would you include Zepho like glyphs and stuff? I don't just randomly like, let's throw some on a completely different planet. Although the Zepho did disappear.
They were all over the place.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised but for the death, like for the Night Sisters particularly, I think it's really interesting that we're choosing to like do this with them.
Yeah. Like that the feminine is coming back to the galaxy.
And she's angry.
And scared. And we have the mothers, the mothers coming back to the galaxy, and they're angry and like pissed off. Like there's so many interesting things that when you're like, create your murder board with all of the string, you're like, what are they saying? What are they saying? Ugh. I do think this ties into, the idea that the dyad is actually really, really important to the story.
Yeah. And I think that's really why Lucasfilm was so on board with, I don't believe that they intended to kill him at all. I don't think Ben was supposed to die originally at the end of The Rise of Skywalker. I think that was a later thing that would have been added, in my opinion anyway. I could be wrong.
I don't know. I mean, I've heard Pablo talk about it and that it was kind of always in the draft. I just think that they realized it didn't do what they thought it would do.
Because like I get the impression that like basically pretty much like almost right after that movie came out, Kathleen Kennedy was like, okay, so like can we bring him back now? It was basically because like that came out in like December 2019, and she went to Adam in 2022. So like basically just like that, it was basically 2020 when she started thinking like, evaluation started what had been happening. And so it was basically only like a year.
Well, there's
roughly,
an
year and a half.
There's an infamous meeting that Adam Driver had in November of 2019, just before The Rise of Skywalker came out, where he was at Lucasfilm. Raylos know these things.
See, I was like, this is what's so like magical about our friendship, because like I was not privy to so much stuff when I was a little baby Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
In online fandom. I've been a lifelong Star Wars fan, but like in terms of the online fandom, I was not privy to so much stuff. And so
because you weren't online, it's fine.
You have like all of the wisdom to give me. So, like basically what you're saying,
though. We do think that that's where they're heading, right? In Ahsoka, in Maul and his show, bringing in Talon. They're bringing in Talon. Yes. What are they doing? Another strong feminine character who by the time could come into, say, like the Mandalorian and Grogu, Mandalorian verse stuff. Yeah. Definitely showing more and more of this stuff. Mandalorian and Grogu as well, and the Mandalorian show never show that the sequel trilogy is going away. They only double down on everything that leads into it.
The big mystery that has to do with Baby Yoda, with Grogu in the first, like, the first 2 seasons is basically like, okay, so we're finding out the Imperial Remnant has been dabbling in some cloning stuff, and they're trying to figure out how to get Force-sensitive clones. Yep. I wonder why that might be.
Exactly. Like, it's never been to do anything but basically say, yeah, the sequel trilogy is actually really, really important for some reason.
And we're just going to give you more context so that you can appreciate what's happening with more context. Yeah. I mean, it's no different. It's no different than like the Clone Wars to me for the prequel trilogy, where like a lot of people are like have mixed feelings about the prequel trilogy, and then they watch Clone Wars and then they're like, oh, I have so much more appreciation now.
Yeah, I think it just gives more context to say this period of time is where we need to resolve things. It certainly is not the end of the story. And that is what is really, really important to me, is that Palpatine was a bad guy.
Yeah.
He wasn't even like
the bad guy.
The bad guy, because he was literally like just this line of Sith that existed.
Yeah. And if anything, like, obviously we'll find out more with Baylan, but I feel like he was probably something that whatever this thing is that was calling to him was probably like looking at Palpatine as like a pawn.
Yeah. Yeah. Which sort of makes it like, how could they go bigger bad than Palpatine? Well, literally something that is
going to destroy the entire universe.
Yeah, exactly. That 3 Night Sisters and Thrawn are scared of.
Yeah. And I think that's like something that we brought it up earlier, but like this idea of context of how big your bad is. Because if this thing we're saying is not that big of an issue right now, like that's not even it.
Thrawn wasn't even
these people are scared of this thing. No, but he's scared of whatever this is.
Yeah. I also don't think it's going to be the Yuzan Vong.
No.
That's an important thing as well. They've never laid the groundwork to show that Palpatine was working on anything that would be related to saving the galaxy from some sort of bad guy. I really don't think that's going to be something that's part of this.
And
they might to say Thrawn wants to protect the galaxy from this bad thing, right?
They could. I bet it's something that I could see them doing for Thrawn in like a similar but like slightly different way, where like with Thanos in Marvel, where like he's clearly wrong in what he's doing and how he's going about things, but I also understand the issue that he has and the thing that how he's going about things is wrong. And so like Thrawn, and I actually think this could also benefit Thrawn, at least from like a propaganda standpoint of like, hey, so look at these witches. They will prove to you that there is something really, really bad out there, and I'm the only one who can help you stop it. So you better side with me so that I will protect you. Yeah.
Yeah. And then whatever remains from whatever happens in that turns into the Snoke factory, the First Order, right?
I think that probably like, because a lot of people just assume that like whatever Filoni's movie, this like culminating thing, is going to basically be like his version of Heir to the Empire, the original Thrawn books. And so like the Jorah Sabayoth character, who was originally like a misinterpretation of what the Clone Wars were, or like before they had information on what the Clone Wars actually were.
Yeah.
But I think a theory that I have brought up and that I think might be a thing is we bring Andy Serkis back, and that ends up being Snoke.
Oh, interesting.
Because even relatively recently, around 2023, when sort of like that's where we get all this information about the Dawn of the Jedi movie, Filoni's movie, all of that stuff, and also more information about Ahsoka before it came out. Around that time, Andy Serkis had done an interview where someone asked him about him. Like, I think the question was like, if he could talk to George Lucas, what would he ask him? And he basically was like to give Snoke a backstory, he wanted to like basically that he thinks that there's a lot of fertile ground for like figuring out where Snoke came from and stuff like that. So it seems like Andy Serkis would be open to doing that kind of story. I think it would be the natural next step in terms of everything else they've been setting up in the Mandoverse. And that all again just leads straight into the sequel trilogy and like setting up the sequel trilogy. And where does it go after that?
Yeah.
I think is like the big thing. And because the only thing that takes place after that is Starfighter.
Right now.
But it's very right now. We would have had the Hunt for Ben Solo, and however Rey's new Jedi Order movie comes about. But right now all we have is Starfighter, and by all accounts that's like could potentially be like super isolated and sort of like self-contained. And so like we're still like, if it's self-contained, it's still like, okay, but like what's the next part and the real story?
I get the feeling that it's like what they tried to achieve with Skeleton Crew, but on the big screen to try and like get the 12-year-olds, get the 10-year-olds, get the 8 to 12-year-olds.
Possibly.
You know?
But like it still leaves you with like, but we still need to actually get like, that's all well and dandy. And I love that. Like I love Skeleton Crew. But like I want the main story now. I want what's coming next. Like, and you can't leave it there.
The saga movies themselves have a certain amount of gravitas and pull to them for the general audience. They're like, oh, it's a new episode of Star Wars, the main title.
Yeah,
you know,
and that's sort of kind of like also like 2023's celebration is so interesting because they basically do the typical Marvel slate type of pitch with like, we're going to be doing the Dawn of the Jedi with James Mangold, and it's going to be like a biblical epic, and it's going to be the origin of the Jedi, and the origin of Force. We're going to get all that, and it's going to be a whole era. Like this is just the first movie, and then we're going to get Dave Filoni's movie that's culminating all of this stuff, and then we're getting the new Jedi Rey movie.
Yeah,
like that's like very clearly like
they know and even what they're trying to say.
Yeah, and what they're wanting to do, and that's just sort of been a wrench has been thrown in the works for them because of the Hunt for Ben Solo. For now, anyway, until we finally get them to greenlight that movie.
Hey, as long as the script is not leaked.
Exactly. I don't want it to leak. I don't want to know until I'm. I don't want to know.
Yeah, just give me my movie.
Yeah. Should we talk about?
Let them tell the story that they want to tell.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the biggest takeaway that I've had from everything that's come out since Adam's interview. Yeah. Like they have a plan. Let them tell their story. Don't interfere, Disney.
Yeah.
Should we talk a little bit about the fourth precept?
Now this is weird. Yes.
This is where it started for us. This is where it started
and we were like questioning stuff. Because yes, it did start with the Hunt for Ben Solo coming out and then us talking about it. And you were looking at the fourth precept and I'm like, well, that's one of my favorite things that has ever existed. So that's cool. So the fourth precept is a comic that came about around the time of the prequels with some of the storyboard artists that were participating in Star Wars Visionaries from Dark Horse Comics. And it is a very short, wordless comic. The only words are literally the title, which is the fourth precept.
And it is so weird.
It is.
But beautiful, but so
weird and amazing and cool. And it kind of starts out with a light side and a dark side figure with lightsabers. And they're in this like egg
Mhm.
that has
Yeah.
been
Yep.
separated. And there's
Mhm.
this like planet that they seem to be inside of, that is like in this like proto galaxy. And they see
Mhm.
this like call to like leave, and then they fight these demon like creatures. And at first I thought they were fighting each other. When I read
Yeah.
this years and
Mhm.
years ago, I thought they were fighting each other, but they're actually fighting the demons, which leans
Mhm.
into my Shiva theory.
Yeah, it was when you mentioned that to me, my mind was blown because I was like, "You're right. They're like turned out towards the monsters a bit, and they're like so like and their sabers are pointed towards the monsters, and then like
And then they start fighting each other
yes,
officially because their lightsabers are crossed, and
Mhm.
then they twin binary swirl with all of these sort of death-like ships that are around them.
Yeah.
Until they finally explode what looks like could be an electron, could be like a cell or something, because the first
They're
image
like
kind of
a
looks like a cell.
Big Bang.
Big Bang. And then they're in the as above, so below Judeo star
Mhm.
with an omega symbol and the V representing the feminine.
Mhm.
And then it's on top of a bloodstream,
Yeah.
and it
And
says the end or
and
end.
the positioning of the figures, the masculine dark side in quotations figure has his arms outstretched,
Yeah,
with a fist and an open palm on the side,
like
but
the
the open
daughter
arms,
and
like the
son.
daughter and the son,
Yeah,
and with his arms outstretched, it turns the omega into, which omega means like ending, completion,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. It turns that into the zodiac Libra symbol, which has to do with
balance.
Balancing of scales and justice,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. And with the
V.
the light side, so with the light side figure, she's like holding the saber like the prime Jedi symbol.
Yep.
And the V for her, that like to me, I was like picking up on all the stuff that like you've taught me over the years of listening to your podcast, and I was like, Gambutus.
Yeah.
And because she talks about the V, or the chevron, as associated with bird goddesses and fertility.
Yeah, it's
so it's like it's a sign of the feminine
symbol, right?
But also like with the V being upside down, and because of the geometry of the thing, if you turn it upright, it also kind of looks like an A, which means alpha. And so alpha omega means beginning and the end.
Yeah. And they're in balance.
And they're in balance. And the daughter says, we are the guards of we are the ones who guard the power. We are the middle, the beginning, and the end.
Mm-hmm.
And she is a bird goddess because her form is a griffin, and she has the confor mori. And this is where my mind started to get blown again, because I was like, oh, lots more goddess stuff. Because so the for Star Wars Celebration Japan, they showed these like concept arts for season 2, and we see these like big
metal birds.
Massive droid metal
like
bird things that Ahsoka and Sabine are facing. And at first my mind went to like Odin and like the 2 ravens, but upon seeing this, I reevaluated that, and I was like, okay, no, I think this has to do with the daughter, because in Mortis, and again in the World Between Worlds, you see these 3 animals. A bird, the kind of bird kind of changes, but so I'm just saying bird plural,
a snake,
a snake, and a wolf.
Yeah.
And we see the wolf obviously as the portal guardians in Rebels.
Yeah.
In the Lothal Temple. And
can I tell you why I'm obsessed with snakes?
I want to know why you're obsessed with snakes.
I
Please tell me.
I think that the son is a snake. I think that he is the snake.
Yeah, I think so too, because I think the wolf is the father, and I think the bird is the daughter.
Yeah.
And so these droids, I think, are have a connection. They're powered by the Force, I think.
Oh, cool.
And they are the same thing as the wolves are. They are also a portal or some sort of guardian of something. And they are the guardians that are associated with the daughter. So I don't know where we're going to find the snake, but the snake's got to come up at some point because 2 out of 3 at this point.
No, and I mean, Maul is associated with the snake.
Oh, yeah, because Clone Wars.
Because of Morley, the snake that fed him in the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a snake tongue tattooed on his face.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay. We're well beyond the sort of thesis of this, which is there's a big bad.
Yeah.
They have to solve it. There is something that they were working towards. The Force has been incredibly consistently applied, and there is still things that George originally brought in the prequels that is still there.
And like when it comes to like the 4th precept, also like kind of where this came from is the fact that when I brought up the 4th precept in our conversation, it was because I was referring to the Rise of Skywalker visual dictionary where I was talking about
they mentioned
the Ramagon, because it says that the thing on the front is the omniscient eye is from the 4th precept, a poem that describes gods battling in the primeval universe.
And then I was like, the 4th precept, the Visionaries comic. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it's like the coolest thing in Star Wars that has like very little words. Yeah.
And it's like that's sort of like where all this came from.
I feel like I know so much about Star Wars that I've actually forgotten. I knew they mentioned that in The Last Jedi or in the Rise of Skywalker visual dictionary. There's so many little things that they're like, oh yeah, and this is all connected to everything that has ever happened, and we still have story to tell.
Yeah. And like this is where also
it makes you crazy.
It makes you crazy. And like I know that like I agree with you. Like I don't think that Abeloth is what they're going to do as like the source of the rock.
Dark feminine. It will be scary.
It will be scary. It will be dark feminine. It's going to be the mother. But in terms of connections to Abeloth and anything they might use to a degree, one thing that is consistent with her is that when like the ones would have to continually subdue her and like trap her, but she would always get out whenever I can't remember if it was whenever the galaxy was in balance or whenever it was out of balance, but she would eventually escape. And then they would have to contain her again. And then now the ones are dead. So they're not going to be around.
They're not dead.
They're not. Well, yeah, but like in the sense of like what we see in Mortis, like
they've passed on their spirit. And so Ahsoka is the daughter. It's very
Anakin
clear.
Is the father. And so I think that it'll be like we'll have a similar thing where like she needs to be subdued until she can actually be like healed, defeated, whatever. And
Space
that
Moana.
also explains, yes, Space Moana. And that's like why Anakin isn't around during the sequel trilogy, because he's very busy right now with his wife.
Yes, keeping her in check. And this is where our tinfoil tiaras have really come out, because we're like, it's all connected. These dots, we've connected them.
We've connected them.
And yeah, we've gone off the rails a little bit, but it could all happen because the thing is, like, the symbols don't lie. And the fact that they're pulling from these things that were just concepts in the early like movie development means that they're still thinking about them.
Yeah, 100%.
Wild.
Now we just need the for Ben Solo to happen.
We just give Lucasfilm lots of money to actually tell the stories they want to tell. I want weird Force stories. I
want weird Force stories.
I'm so excited about Ahsoka season 2 because we're going to get so much weird Force stories. In fact, Hannah, you and I should schedule time to talk about Ahsoka season 1.
Yes.
I 100%. Did write like 20,000 words on it already, but I think
and I've read all of it.
Did you? Oh.
Yeah.
What did you think?
I loved it.
Okay, good.
It was like
pulling from it heavily. But I think it would be worthwhile to actually do a deep dive into what's important and what is being said by Dave from a mythological symbolism perspective. and what this means to the overall story. Because there is like a lot going on in Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then obviously, like, season 2 is going to be coming out potentially in 2026. So
yeah, no, it's definitely 2026. They've said that. I just suspect it'll be like late summer, early fall.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, well, I hope it's not December. I hope it's like earlier in fall. I don't know if it would be great if it was in the summer, but I don't know if that might be too early. But I think they wrapped filming like a little bit ago at this point, though. Anyway.
Yeah, so they started right when Celebration was on. That's when they were starting. But they were already done all of the animation for Maul, and so that'll be early 2026.
Okay, yeah.
And then we have the Ninth Jedi movie as well.
Yes. Okay. 2026 is going to be a big year.
It's going to be fun. Lots of cool Force stuff. Maul being a baddie.
I can't wait to talk. I can't wait for Maul, Shadow Lord. I'm so excited for that. I'm so glad it's going to be so soon. And I also can't wait to talk Ahsoka with you.
I'm going to be covering Maul with Katie, who's the world's biggest Maul fan. And she is obsessed with the fact that this is probably going to be Talon. I think we've given some evidence that it probably definitely is, maybe.
Yeah. I think, I think so. I would bet money on it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for coming on this journey with us. We've definitely enjoyed talking all about the Force thus far. And what is it telling us for the future of Star Wars? Hannah, where can people find you if they're looking for you online?
Well, you can find me usually on Extra Blue Sky at Shihaya Springs. I also have a YouTube channel now called Theories of the Force. Yeah, I have one video out on there.
I will link to all of those things in the liner notes. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and cheers. Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our orchestral music is by Christy Carew for What the Force. You can support the show directly on Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We would like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love and are obsessed with What the Force. Christian R., Adrian, Sarah Joy, Scott, John, In Wild Space, Minky Moo, Derek C., How Rude, Christian Luca, Carly Ann, and Scott C. Support the show by wearing the Force with our merch. Like and subscribe on YouTube, or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other pod apps. It helps people find the show. You can connect with us on Blue Sky at WT Force, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, or on our website at whattheforce.ca, or our Discord. Links are in the liner notes. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.